So you've got the GAT coming up, or you might be watching this the day before. Either way, I know that the General Achievement Test can be a daunting task, and you might have heard conflicting views on whether this affects your ATAR, whether you should study for this or not, or whether you need to follow the memes. Well, I can't help you for the last one, but as for the first two, this video is going to be a guide on the most important things to know before doing the GAT, because there have been some changes starting from 2022. So this is how this video is going to be structured. Let's first look at why we need to do the GAT in the first place. So in a nutshell, the GAT has a couple of purposes. So first, it's to confirm basic literacy and numeracy skills. And this is also reported on your education certificate. So you need a certain mark to pass for this. And then the second point is to standardize your SAC and exam scores. And you might be wondering if the GAT score affects your ATAR. And yes, it can, but it can only affect your score in a positive way. So let's be extreme and say that you get every single question wrong. Even if that's the case, it won't drag down your actual ATAR. So hopefully that gets rid of some concerns. And this has just been a brief overview. So I'll link the official VCAR website below, which has some more information on the GAT if you're interested. So now let's talk about the updated structure of the GAT. And there might still be changes, but I'll let everyone know of any changes in the comment section below. So anyways, the GAT is now split into two sections, so Section A and Section B. Section A contains 50 multiple choice questions on maths, so it's assessing numeracy, 50 multiple choice questions on reading, so literacy, and it also contains one short writing task that is split into two parts. And for this entire section, you were given 15 minutes reading time and 2 hours writing. And if you want to see sample questions for this, in the description of this video, next to Section A, click the link and it will take you to this page. And this shows you the 3 types of questions that you might come across. So you can see that we have reading up here, and you can scroll down and see all the questions. You have numeracy, and that has some sample questions plus answers as well. And then the writing task, which you can see is split into 2 parts, so Part A and Part B. And then the next section, so Section B of the GAT, this contains 25 multiple choice questions on maths, science, and technology, 25 multiple choice questions on arts and humanities, and an extended writing task. And altogether, this section gives you 15 minutes reading time plus 90 minutes of writing. And if you want to see sample questions for this, again, go to the description of this video, click on the link next to Section B, and this will take you here. And this page has all the past exams. And this is because Section B of the new GAT is basically just a shorter version of what the older GATs look like. So if we look at the old GAT here, there's 2 writing tasks. This is number 1, and this one is writing task number 2. And then after this, there's 70 multiple choice questions. And now in the new version of the GAT, there is no writing task 1, so ignore this. There is only writing task 2, so this one. This is the only one you need to know how to do. And for this second one, this is basically where you express your point of view by using one or more of the following statements. But I'll have a separate video next week which will cover this in more detail. And then the multiple choice, rather than 70 questions, this has been cut down to 50, but all the questions are of the same style. So to summarize, there are 50 multiple choice questions plus 1 writing task for this entire section of the new GAT. Now, if you're wondering how to manage your time for both of these sections, I personally recommend as a starting point to use 1 minute for 1 multiple choice question, and then rest of the time on the writing tasks. But then adjust this depending on your strengths and weaknesses. So what to bring? Pens, pencils, and some spare is always good. Rubber, sharpener, and a transparent pencil case, and a dictionary and a calculator. And then optional, you might like a watch to time yourself, a water bottle, highlighter, and a ruler, just to draw straight lines so you can easily read off the graphs. So even though you aren't required to study for the GAT, I did find it more reassuring and I had more confidence if I just had a basic overview of the GAT structure, as well as know some basic tips and tricks for each section. But overall for me, it wasn't a lot of time. So in the 5 to 6 weeks leading up to the GAT, I think I spent around 1 to 2 hours each week. And most of that wasn't hardcore study. It was more so just watching videos like this one and seeing how past students felt about the GAT, what parts they found hard and any tips they had. And then I just recorded these in a document which I looked at before my actual GAT. And I also did some practice questions just to get used to the style of the GAT. And you might find this excessive, but I did end up doing 1 full trial exam. And that was mainly just a test like my timing for the actual exam. So that is really optional. I didn't find that it helped that much. What I recommend instead is you go through one paper, but instead of doing it under time conditions, work through each section over separate days. And that way you can just focus on a particular set of questions each time and really understand how to approach each type of question. And if you're revising for the GAT, keep in mind something called the law of diminishing return. And this basically means that if you just put some hours in, just a basic effort, then you can already feel quite prepared. And if you put in more hours, yes, this can help, but there's less of a return on your time investment. So this basically means just by putting in some effort and watching some videos, you can already be ahead of most of the crowd. And most importantly, you have this safety net, just in case something unexpected does happen. So I did the old version of the GAT, which was just one sitting, but the lessons I learned and how I improved can still be applied to the new format. So here are my year 11 scores if you're interested, but basically just look at the scaled scores and they're calculated the same way as your study score. So for example, a 30 is around average, so top 50%, and a 40 score or higher is about the top 8 to 10%. So in year 11, I got mid-30s, and this was with little experience and preparation. And as I mentioned, I did do a full practice exam, but it didn't help that much in my opinion. So if I did have to go back, I would focus more on the writing tasks because they really caught me off guard. But luckily, there's lots of videos on YouTube to help you with that. And rather doing a full paper, like I mentioned before, I would have been better off doing one trial exam, but split it up into separate sections, and then focusing on each question with a lot of detail and making sure I understand the process behind each type of question. And this would have been very important because for me, I was weakest in some of the arts and humanities, as you can see from my scores, and analysing how to approach these questions would have helped me in the actual GAT much more. And then in year 12, here were my GAT results. So the purpose of showing you these two results is to show you the improvements I made and the steps I took to achieve these. So let's go over some quick tips that I found quite useful. So what to do during reading time. I personally found it quite helpful to go over the writing segments because I know a lot of people, including myself, find these parts quite challenging. So using reading time, you can go through the prompts that they give you and plan out a sort of essay or a plan in your head. So that way when writing time starts, you can get this quickly over and done with. And this is for both sections of the GAT, Section A and Section B. And then for the order of the exams, so following from the previous point, I did the writing section first, and then I just did the rest of the multiple choice questions in order. And this is because if you do get time pressured, you can always guess the multiple choice, but you'll have a hard time guessing an essay. So next, some multiple choice tips for both sections, and I'll just do a rapid fire. So first, make sure you circle the right one. There's a lot of questions, so make sure that the answer that you're circling in corresponds to the actual question that you're answering. Next, careful of qualifiers, such as when the question asks for the highest or the most likely. Just be careful of those words. Next, look through all your options, so all the multiple choice options, because oftentimes there's a few correct answers, but there's only one that is the most correct. So it's important that you read through all of them and pick the one that is the best. Next, be precise when you're measuring graphs and diagrams, and this is why I recommend using a ruler, because sometimes when you're off 1 or 2 millimeters, it can completely skew your results. And for the reading sections, search up all the words you don't know because you have a dictionary, and usually you should have enough time. And finally, eliminate wrong choices, then take your educated guess if needed. So that's it. And in the next video, I'll be covering a detailed guide on how to approach that extended writing task, because this is an area that often myself and many other students find quite challenging. So I'll be sharing my sample essays and some tips for that section. And I'll link that below once it's ready. And thanks for watching. And if you want to support me, a somewhat small YouTuber, then I would appreciate a subscribe. And I'll see you all next time.